It really depends on how you look at it. I mean, there's of course the whole compliance side of it, which means that you need to have if you need to build, if we're talking construction, you need to be compliant with the regulatory demands of the future, which is going to focus a lot more on building materials. So if you look at a house today, newly built house in Denmark, when I was a kid, then the lifetime emissions of a house was the amount of electricity and heating you used during its lifetime. Today, 80% of those emissions, of the lifetime's emissions, are in the construction of the house, of the building. So it's in materials. So what we need to look at is how we change the way that we build, where we focus on materials, reducing the materials intensity, and that is a big task. I think the cost is, of course, an issue, because on the one hand, you could say that there's some benefits, but there's also a huge cost for all societies in making this transition. Mm-hmm. And I think most societies are in a situation where they would rather use their money on something else, better schools, better buildings, better housing, better whatever, better standard of living. So using some of those funds for climate change, I think, is not something that most people would want to commit to. Mm-hmm. So I think, and that will also be the case in the Balkans. So I think there is a hesitation, I think, which is natural. Mm-hmm. But I think also there's there's opportunities there as well. So opportunities within ecotourism and other areas where one can benefit. Mm-hmm. But it will be both positive and negative. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're a mother of 6 in Bangladesh, I don't think you worry that much about climate change. I mean, you do, because actually, if you're a mother in Bangladesh, you feel climate change. So it is a very concrete problem. But on the top of your list will be education for your kids. It will be a good job, so that you can actually have a better standard of living. So yeah, there's a definite merit to the saying that this is what happens on the top of the Maslow pyramid, that you focus on the long-term future generations and so forth. Mm-hmm. But with that saying, I mean, I think it's worth noting that if we want to move towards a future, if we want to give a future to future generations, our kids, our grandkids, we will have to do something about it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think the more affluent societies should pay the higher cost. Well, if you make the calculation, it very much depends on what country you're in. So if you're in Denmark, yes, because we have more than half of our electricity is from renewables, it makes sense to drive an electric car. But if you're switching to an electric car in a country where you have most of the electricity comes from coal, then it doesn't make sense. So yes, the electric car in the future and in those countries where there's a high degree of renewables makes sense, because if you add in the material cost, it will still be a more green option, but you will need the transition of the system before you actually transition with the cars. Well, by definition, all megatrends impact just about everyone in different ways. So I think that the key ones here, I think, is in terms of sustainability, is globalization, the fact that globalization is changing. In many cases, in many ways, you could say it's for the positive. We have a situation where we are moving from an American, Western-dominated world to an increasingly Chinese-dominated world. And if you look at what the Chinese are investing in, they're investing very heavily in renewables. So they will own, they already own solar, they will own wind, and many others, also EVs. So I think sustainability and globalization is really one of the two megatrends to look out for.